On a dry, windless afternoon, a man in expensive clothes crosses an abandoned farm in his imported Jeep, carrying a metal box. Inside, his 8-year-old daughter, covered in rotting meat, trembles as she hears dogs barking in the distance. Without a word, the man steps out, drags the box to a rusted pen, and leaves it there among hungry dogs. From a nearby hill, a white horse whinnies, agitated. As the father turns his back, one of the dogs leaps at the fence, and the horse charges down. The hill, what happens next? No one is ready to see. Love animal stories? Then subscribe now so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for being with us. Now, back to the story. The metal bars pressed against 8-year-old Lily May's thin shoulders as she huddled in the corner of what had once been a chicken coop behind the dilapidated farmhouse. The wire mesh was rusted and sharp, cutting into her arms when she moved, but she had learned long ago to stay very still. The smell of rotting wood and old hay mixed with something far worse, the stench of neglect that seemed to cling to everything in this forgotten corner of rural Nebraska. Through the gaps in the wooden slats, she could see the endless prairie, stretching toward the horizon, golden wheat swaying in the wind like a sea of freedom she could never reach. The irony wasn't lost on her young mind. All that open space, and she was trapped in a cage barely large enough for her small frame, her stomach cramped with hunger, a feeling so familiar it had become her constant companion. The adults, she couldn't bring herself to call them family, had shoved a piece of stale bread through the wire that morning, maybe yesterday. Time blurred together when you lived in darkness. The sound of heavy footsteps on the porch made her press herself deeper into the shadows. Through the thin walls of the house, she could hear raised voices, the crash of glass, the slam of doors. These sounds had been the soundtrack of her short life, as constant as her own heartbeat. "Worthless little thing," came the harsh voice of Martha Crowley, the woman who was supposed to be caring for her. "State pays us good money for nothing, but trouble." Lily May had arrived at the Crowley farm 3 months ago, another forgotten child in the system, shuttled from one placement to another like an unwanted package. The social worker, Mrs. Henderson, had smiled encouragingly as she'd driven away, promising to check on her soon. That was the last Lily May had seen of anyone from the outside world. The first week hadn't been so bad. She'd slept on a cot in the basement, eaten scraps from the family table, and tried to make herself invisible. But invisibility, she learned, was not protection enough. When little things went missing, a jar of preserves, a small tool from the barn, the blame inevitably fell on the foster child who had nowhere else to go. "Lock her up," Frank Crowley had growled one evening after accusing her of stealing money from his wallet. "Maybe that'll teach her some respect." The chicken coop had been her prison ever since. A bucket of water changed when they remembered, scraps of food when they felt generous. In the heat of the Nebraska summer, the metal, the structure became an oven. During the thunderstorms that rolled across the plains, it leaked and flooded, leaving her shivering in inches of muddy water. But Lily May had discovered something the Crowleys didn't know about. Every evening, just as the sun began to set and paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, a magnificent white horse appeared at the fence line. At first, she thought she was hallucinating from hunger and heat exhaustion. Wild horses hadn't roamed this part of Nebraska in decades, or so she'd overheard Frank telling his drinking buddies. Yet there he stood, as real as the pain in her empty stomach. The horse was beautiful in a way that made her chest tight with longing. His coat was pure white like fresh snow, and his mane flowed like silk in the evening breeze. But it was his eyes that captivated her, dark, intelligent, and filled with something she hadn't seen in so long. She'd almost forgotten what it looked like. Compassion. The horse never came closer than the fence, but he always stayed until full darkness fell. Sometimes he would lower his great head and simply watch her, as if he understood her predicament. Other times he would pace along the fence line, his hooves striking the ground with what seemed like frustration or anger. "You see him too, don't you, girl?" Lily May startled at the voice. Through the wire mesh, she could make out the weathered face of Earl McKinnon, the neighbor whose property bordered the Crowleys. She'd seen him working in his fields but had never spoken to him. The old man was kneeling by the coop, his kind eyes crinkled with concern. "The white stallion," Earl continued softly. "Been watching him for weeks now. Never seen a wild horse behave like that. It's like he's guarding something." Lily May wanted to speak, to tell him about the horse's daily visits, about how those moments of watching the beautiful creature were the only things that kept her from giving up entirely. But her voice had grown rusty from disuse and fear. Earl's weathered hand reached through the wire, and she flinched instinctively. But his touch was gentle as he brushed a tear from her cheek, a tear she hadn't even realized was falling. "What's your name, child?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Lily May," she managed, the words scratching her throat. "Well, Lily May, I'm Earl, and I want you to know that someone sees you, someone cares." He glanced toward the house, where the sounds of another argument were escalating. "That horse out there? He sees you too. Animals, they know things. They know when something ain't right." As if summoned by their conversation, the white stallion appeared at the fence line, earlier than usual. His powerful frame was silhouetted against the setting sun, and for a moment, Lily May felt a flicker of something she'd thought was lost. Forever. Hope. Earl followed her gaze and nodded slowly. "I've been around horses my whole life, and I've never seen anything like it. That stallion broke through 3 different barriers to get close to this property. He's not just wandering, he's here with purpose." The old man stood slowly, his joints creaking with age. "I'm going to make some phone calls tonight, Lily May. People need to know what's happening here, but until then, you remember what I said. You're not alone. That horse is watching over you, and now, so am I." As Earl walked away, Lily May pressed her face against the wire mesh and watched the white stallion. The magnificent creature stepped closer to the fence than ever before, his nostrils flaring as if he could smell her fear and desperation. For one impossible moment, their eyes met across the darkening yard, and she felt a connection she couldn't explain, a silent promise that somehow, some way, deliverance would come. The horse remained at his post long into the night, a ghostly sentinel under the Nebraska stars, while inside the chicken coop, a little girl dared to dream of freedom for the first time in months. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new pain, but tonight she was not alone. Tonight she had a guardian who asked for nothing in return except the chance to stand witness to her suffering and perhaps to her eventual salvation. The wind carried the scent of prairie grass and distant rain, and with it, the first whisper of change. Dawn broke over the Crowley farm with the harsh reality of another day. Lily May had dozed fitfully against the wire mesh, her small body cramped from trying to find a comfortable position in the confined space. The morning air carried the promise of scorching heat, and she knew the metal coop would soon become unbearable. But something was different today. The white stallion hadn't disappeared with the sunrise as he usually did. Instead, he stood closer to the fence than ever before, his powerful frame tense with an energy that made the air itself seem to vibrate with anticipation. "Well, I'll be damned," Frank Crowley's voice carried across the yard. "That crazy horse is back. Been out there all night from the looks of it." Through the slats of the house, Lily May could see him stumbling onto the porch, a bottle already in his hand despite the early hour. His bloodshot eyes focused on the stallion with the kind of malice that made her stomach clench with dread. Should have shot that beast weeks ago. Probably diseased he muttered, disappearing back into the house. The sound of his truck engine starting moments later sent a wave of panic through Lily May. She'd seen Frank's hunting rifle mounted above the mantelpiece, had heard him bragging to his friends about the deer he'd killed last season if he came back with that gun. The stallion seemed to sense the danger too. His ears pricked forward, and he began to pace along the fence line, his hooves striking the hard-packed earth with increasing agitation. But he didn't flee. Instead, he moved closer to the chicken coop, as if positioning himself between Lily May and whatever threat might come. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, turning the metal structure into a furnace that made every breath feel like fire in her lungs. Her water bucket was nearly empty, and the heat was making her dizzy and nauseous. But the stallion remained, now standing in whatever shade he could find, his magnificent head turning frequently to check on her. It was nearly noon when Earl McKinnon's pickup truck pulled into the Crowley driveway. Lily May pressed her face against the wire mesh, hoping to catch a glimpse of the kind old man who had shown her such unexpected compassion. But he wasn't alone. A woman in a crisp blue dress stepped out of the passenger side, Mrs. Henderson, the social worker. "This is highly irregular, Mr. McKinnon," Mrs. Henderson was saying as they approached the front porch. "I appreciate your concern, but I can't just show up unannounced based on—" Her words died as her gaze fell on the chicken coop and the small figure huddled inside. The color drained from her face, and for a moment she stood frozen in shock. "Dear God," she whispered. Then her voice rose to a shout. "Martha! Frank! Get out here! Right now!" The front door slammed open and Martha Crowley emerged, her face flushed with anger and what might have been alcohol, even at this early hour. "What's all the shouting about? You got no right coming onto our property without—" "What is that child doing in a cage?" Mrs. Henderson's voice cut through Martha's protests like a blade. "What have you done to her?" "She's been acting up," Martha said defensively. "Stealing, lying, causing nothing but trouble. We're just trying to teach her some discipline." "Discipline?" Earl's voice shook with barely controlled rage. "You've locked an 8-year-old child in a chicken coop in 90-degree heat. This isn't discipline, this is torture." As the adults argued, Lily May became aware of another presence. The white stallion had moved to stand directly behind the chicken coop, his large body casting a blessed shadow over the metal structure. She could hear his breathing, slow and steady like a heartbeat that seemed to sync with her own. Mrs. Henderson was already on her phone, her voice sharp and official as she spoke to someone about emergency removal and immediate placement. But Lily May barely heard the words. All her attention was focused on the magnificent creature who had somehow known to provide her with shade in her darkest hour. "You can't just take her," Martha was shrieking now. "We got legal guardianship. The state pays us good money." "The state pays you to care for her, not to abuse her," Mrs. Henderson snapped back. "Earl, can you help me get her out of there?" The old rancher was already working at the makeshift lock Frank had rigged to the chicken coop door. His weathered hands shook with emotion as he fumbled with the wire and metal contraption. "It's okay, Lily May," he said softly. "We're going to get you out of there. You're safe now." But even as the lock finally gave way and the door swung open, Lily May found herself unable to move. She'd been cramped in the same position for so long that her legs wouldn't cooperate, and the bright sunlight made her squint and shield her eyes. That's when the stallion did something extraordinary. He lowered his great head over the fence and breathed gently on her face, his warm breath carrying the scent of prairie grass and freedom. The gesture was so tender, so filled with understanding, that it gave her the courage to slowly unfold herself and accept Earl's helping hands. "Easy now, child," Earl murmured as he lifted her carefully from the coop. "You're going to be just fine." Mrs. Henderson wrapped a blanket around Lily May's shoulders despite the heat and guided her toward the pickup truck. But Lily May kept looking back at the white stallion, who was now standing proudly at the fence as if he knew his vigil was finally over. "That horse," Mrs. Henderson said quietly to Earl as they settled Lily May into the air-conditioned cab of the truck. "I've never seen anything like it. It's almost as if he was watching over her," Earl finished. "Animals know things we don't, ma'am. They can sense innocence, sense when something needs protecting." As they drove away from the Crowley farm, Lily May twisted in her seat to keep the stallion in sight as long as possible. He was following along the fence line now, his powerful legs eating up the ground as he matched their pace. At the property line, he stopped and reared up on his hind legs, his front hooves pawing the air in what looked like a victory dance or a farewell salute. "Will I ever see him again?" Lily May asked, her voice barely a whisper. Earl met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Wild horses have their own ways, child, but something tells me your paths might cross again someday." Mrs. Henderson was making notes on her clipboard, her jaw set with determination. "I'm filing charges against the Crowleys immediately. What they did to you was criminal, Lily May, but you're safe now, and I promise you'll never have to go through anything like that again." The hospital where they took her was clean and bright, filled with kind faces and gentle voices. As the nurses checked her over and the doctor examined her for signs of serious harm, Lily May found herself thinking not of the pain she'd endured, but of the magnificent white stallion who had stood guard over her when no human being would. That night, as she lay in a clean bed in the children's wing, she could have sworn she heard the distant sound of hoofbeats on the wind. She pressed her face to the window and looked out at the vast Nebraska sky, filled with stars that seemed brighter than she remembered. Somewhere out there, a white stallion was running free across the prairie, carrying with him the silent bond they had forged in her darkest hour. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Lily May fell asleep with a smile on her face. 3 weeks later, Lily May found herself standing on the wraparound porch of the Williamson Ranch, her few belongings clutched in a paper bag that Mrs. Henderson had given her. The emergency placement had led her here to Tom and Sarah Williamson, a childless couple in their 50s who had been fostering children for over a decade. The ranch sprawled across rolling hills dotted with oak trees, and in the distance she could see horses grazing in green pastures. The sight made her heart race with a mixture of hope and longing. Ever since leaving the hospital, she'd dreamed about the white stallion, wondering if she'd imagined the whole thing, or if he really had been her guardian angel in the form of a wild horse. "Welcome home, sweetheart," Sarah Williamson said, her voice warm as honey. She was a small woman with silver hair pulled back in a braid and eyes that crinkled at the corners from years of smiling. "We're so glad you're here." Tom Williamson was tall and lean, with gentle hands that spoke of a lifetime working with animals. He knelt down to Lily May's eye level, not reaching for her but simply making himself available if she needed comfort. "I know this is all pretty scary," he said softly. "New place, new people. But Sarah and we've been waiting for the right child to share our home with, and something tells me you might be exactly who we've been looking for." The house was everything the Crowley place hadn't been. Clean, bright, and filled with the scent of fresh bread and lavender. Lily May's room was small but cheerful, with yellow curtains that let in streams of golden sunlight and a window that looked out over the horse pastures. "The bathroom is right next door," Sarah explained, showing her around. "And you don't need to ask permission to use it, or to get a drink of water, or to come downstairs if you're hungry. This is your home now, and you're safe here." The word safe was still foreign to Lily May's ears. She'd heard it from Mrs. Henderson, from the doctors and nurses, but it hadn't truly sunk in yet. Safety was something other children had, not something meant for girls who lived in chicken coops and survived on scraps. That first dinner was overwhelming in its normalcy. Tom said grace, thanking God for the food and for bringing Lily May to their family. Sarah heaped her plate with pot roast, mashed potatoes and green beans, more food than Lily May had seen in months. When she tried to eat slowly to make it last, Sarah gently encouraged her to eat as much as she wanted. There's plenty more where that came from, honey, and there always will be. After dinner, Tom invited her to walk with him to check on the horses. As they approached the pasture fence, Lily May's heart began to pound. There were several horses, a bay mare with a white blaze, a chestnut gelding, and 2 paint horses with distinctive markings, but no white stallion. "They're beautiful," she whispered, the first word she'd spoken since arriving. Tom smiled. "That they are. Each one has their own personality, their own story. The bay mare there, that's Rosie, found her half-starved at an auction. The chestnut is Duke. He was a racehorse once, but he got injured and his owner was going to put him down. We couldn't let that happen." "You saved them?" Lily May asked. "I guess you could say they saved us too," Tom replied. "Sometimes the things we rescue end up rescuing us right back." As they stood at the fence, Lily May found herself telling Tom about the white stallion, about how he'd watched over her during those terrible weeks. She half expected him to dismiss her story as the imagination of a traumatized child, but Tom listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. "Wild horses are rare in these parts," he said finally, "but not impossible. There's been talk for years about a small herd that roams the northern counties. Some folks claim to have seen a white stallion leading them." "Really?" Lily May's heart leaped with hope. "Really? And if what you're telling me is true, if that horse really did watch over you, then he sounds like something pretty special indeed." That night, Lily May lay in her new bed, staring out the window at the star-filled sky. The sheets were soft and clean, the pillow comfortable beneath her head, but sleep eluded her. She was used to the cramped confines of the chicken coop, to the constant fear and discomfort. This comfort felt almost too good to be true. A soft sound from outside made her sit up. There, silhouetted against the moonlight at the far edge of the pasture, stood a familiar figure. The white stallion was magnificent in the pale light, his coat seeming to glow like starlight itself. He was too far away for her to be certain, but something deep in her heart knew it was him. She pressed her face against the window, tears streaming down her cheeks. He had found her. Somehow across all those miles of Nebraska prairie, he had found her again. The next morning, she told Sarah and Tom about her midnight visitor. They exchanged a meaningful look that she couldn't interpret, but Tom nodded slowly. "There have been reports," he said. "Neighbors seeing a white horse near the property line. I thought it might be related to our mares coming into season. But now I wonder..." "Can we go look for him?" Lily May asked, the words tumbling out in a rush. Sarah and Tom exchanged another look, and this time Sarah smiled. "I think that can be arranged, but first you need to get stronger. You need to eat regular meals, get some sun on your face, and learn to feel safe again. And then, when you're ready, we'll go looking for your guardian angel." Over the following days, Lily May began to settle into the rhythm of ranch life. She helped Sarah in the garden, picking tomatoes and weeding flower beds. She learned to help Tom with the horses, carrying brushes and learning their names. Slowly, carefully, she began to trust that this new life wasn't just another cruel trick, another temporary stop before being shuttled somewhere else. But every evening, she would stand at her bedroom window and search the horizon for a flash of white. Sometimes she saw him, sometimes she didn't, but knowing he was out there, still watching over her, gave her strength to face each new day. The breakthrough came on a sunny Saturday morning when Earl McKinnon's pickup truck pulled into the driveway. Lily May ran to the window, her heart pounding with excitement and nervousness. She hadn't seen the kind old man since the day he'd helped rescue her. "Well, look at you," Earl said when she shyly approached. "You look like a completely different little girl, healthy and happy." "Earl brought us something," Tom said, his eyes twinkling with what looked like a secret. From the back of his truck, Earl pulled out a canvas bag. Inside was an easel, a set of watercolor paints, and a pad of thick paper. "Figured a young lady who's been through what you have might need a way to express herself," Earl said gruffly. "My late wife was an artist. These were hers, and I think she'd be happy knowing they were going to someone who could use them." Lily May stared at the art supplies with wonder. She'd never owned anything so beautiful, so full of possibility. "Can I really keep them?" she whispered. "They're yours, child. Maybe you can paint that white stallion of yours. Some folks might not believe he exists, but I saw the way he watched over you. That horse is real, and he deserves to be remembered." That afternoon, Lily May set up the easel on the porch and tried to capture the image that lived so vividly in her memory. Her first attempts were clumsy, the paint running in ways she didn't expect. But Sarah sat beside her, offering gentle guidance and encouragement. "Art isn't about perfection, honey," Sarah said. "It's about feeling, and anyone can see you've got plenty of feeling to share." As the sun began to set, Lily May stepped back and looked at her painting. It wasn't perfect, but there he was, the white stallion, powerful and proud, standing guard against a prairie sunset. In the painting, he looked exactly as she remembered him, beautiful, strong, and filled with a love that asked for nothing in return. Summer melted into autumn on the Williamson Ranch, and with it came a transformation in Lily May that amazed everyone who knew her story. The scared, broken child, who had arrived with nothing but trauma and a paper bag of belongings, was blossoming into a confident young girl with bright eyes and an infectious laugh. Her art had become her voice when words failed her. The walls of her bedroom were covered with paintings, landscapes of the Nebraska prairie, portraits of the ranch horses, and always, again and again, the white stallion. Each painting captured him from a different angle, in different light, but always with those same intelligent, compassionate eyes that had watched over her in her darkest hour. "She's got real talent," said Mrs. Peterson, the art teacher from the local elementary school who had come to see Lily May's work. "I've been teaching for 30 years, and I've rarely seen such emotional depth in a child's artwork." Sarah beamed with pride as she watched Lily May demonstrate her painting technique to the teacher. The transformation had been remarkable, but it hadn't been without its challenges. There were still nightmares, still moments when a loud noise or sudden movement would send her back into the protective shell she'd built around herself. But love, patience, and the security of knowing she was truly wanted had worked miracles. "We were wondering," Tom said to Mrs. Peterson, "if there might be opportunities for her to show her work, maybe at the county fair or the school art show." "Absolutely," Mrs. Peterson replied. "In fact, I'd like to enter several of her paintings in the state youth art competition. The theme this year is Nebraska wildlife, and these horse paintings would be perfect." But for all the praise and recognition her art was receiving, Lily May had one goal that remained unfulfilled. She wanted to see her white stallion again, up close, to thank him somehow for watching over her. "I know he's still out there," she told Tom one evening as they did their final check on the ranch horses. "I see him sometimes, way out by the creek, but he never comes close anymore." Tom nodded thoughtfully, Wild horses are cautious creatures. Maybe he knows you're safe now, so he doesn't feel the need to stand guard. But I want to see him. I want to... She struggled for the words. I want to tell him thank you. Well, Tom said slowly, I might have an idea about that. But it would mean a real adventure, and you'd have to be very patient. The next morning, Tom outlined his plan over breakfast. He'd been in touch with Dr. Sarah Martinez, a wildlife veterinarian from the University of Nebraska who had been studying the small population of wild horses in the northern counties. She'd been trying to document the herd for years, but had only caught glimpses of them from a distance. Dr. Martinez thinks your white stallion might be the leader of this herd, Tom explained. She's been tracking them using remote cameras, and she's got some pretty interesting footage. She'd like to meet you, actually, and hear your story. Dr. Martinez arrived the following afternoon, an energetic woman in her 40s with sun-streaked hair and eyes that sparkled with scientific curiosity. She set up her laptop on the kitchen table and showed Lily May photographs and video clips captured by her trail cameras. There, she said, pointing to a magnificent white horse in one of the videos. That's him, isn't it? Lily May's breath caught in her throat. There he was, proud and beautiful, leading a small group of horses across a meadow. Even through the grainy footage, she could see the intelligence in his eyes, the regal bearing that had made such an impression on her. That's him, she whispered. That's my guardian. Dr. Martinez smiled. He's quite remarkable. I've been studying wild horses for 15 years, and I've never seen behavior quite like his. The herd usually stays well away from human settlements, but according to my research, he made repeated trips to the area around the Crowley farm during the time you were there. Why would he do that? Sarah asked. Horses are incredibly intuitive animals, Dr. Martinez explained. They can sense distress, fear, pain. It's possible he was drawn by Lily May's situation, compelled to watch over her, even though his instincts should have kept him away from humans. She turned to Lily May with an exciting proposition. I'm planning an expedition next week to try to find the herd and observe them in their natural habitat. It's completely safe. We stay at a distance and use telescopes and cameras. Would you like to come with us? Maybe your presence would help us get close enough for some real documentation. Lily May's heart raced with excitement and nervousness. The chance to see her stallion again, to observe him in his wild habitat, was everything she'd dreamed of. But the thought of venturing so far from the safety of the ranch also frightened her. I'll be with you every step of the way, Tom promised, understanding her conflicted emotions. And if you get scared or want to come home, we'll leave immediately. The expedition team consisted of Dr. Martinez, her graduate assistant Jake, Tom, Sarah, and Lily May. They set out before dawn on a crisp October morning, driving deep into the sandhills of northern Nebraska where the wild herd was last spotted. The landscape was breathtaking, rolling hills covered in prairie grass that had turned golden with the season, small lakes that reflected the vast sky, and in silence, so complete it seemed to have weight. Lily May had never been so far from civilization, and the vastness of it all made her feel both tiny and connected to something much larger than herself. They made camp near a small creek, setting up telescopes and long-range cameras. Dr. Martinez had studied the herd's movement patterns and believed they would come to water here in the late afternoon. Now we wait, she said, settling in behind her equipment. Patience is the most important tool in wildlife observation. As the hours passed, Lily May found herself painting the landscape around them, the way the light played across the hills, the delicate frost on the grass, the flight patterns of the hawks circling overhead. Art had become her way of processing the world, of capturing moments. That felt too important to let slip away. It was nearly sunset when Dr. Martinez suddenly tensed behind her telescope. "There," she whispered urgently. "They're coming." Lily May looked through the smaller telescope Tom had set up for her and gasped. The herd was moving single file down the hillside toward the creek. 8 horses in total, with the magnificent white stallion in the lead. Even at this distance, she could see his powerful grace, the way the other horses followed his lead with complete trust. "He's beautiful," Sarah breathed, watching through binoculars. But as the herd approached the water, the stallion suddenly stopped. His head came up, nostrils flaring as he tested the wind. He'd sensed their presence, even though they were downwind and over 100 yards away. For a long moment he stood perfectly still, scanning the area where they were hidden. Then, impossibly, his gaze seemed to find Lily May through the telescope. Their eyes met across the distance, and she felt that same electric connection she'd experienced during those long nights at the Crowley farm. The stallion took a step toward them, then another. The rest of the herd remained by the water, but he continued to approach, slowly and cautiously, until he was only 50 yards away. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Martinez whispered, her camera clicking rapidly. "He's breaking every rule of wild horse behavior." The stallion stopped at what seemed to be a comfortable distance and simply stood there, looking directly at Lily May. In that moment, she understood that he recognized her, that he remembered their shared vigil during her darkest time. "Thank you," she whispered, not caring that the others could hear her. "Thank you for watching over me." As if he'd heard her words, the stallion lowered his great head in what looked remarkably like a bow. Then he turned and trotted back to his herd, leading them away into the gathering dusk. The drive home was quiet, each member of the expedition processing what they'd witnessed. Dr. Martinez had hours of footage and hundreds of photographs, but Lily May carried something even more precious: the certainty that love and protection could come from the most unexpected sources, and that some bonds transcend species and understanding. That night, she painted until the early hours of morning, capturing not just the image of her stallion, but the feeling of that moment when 2 souls recognized each other across an impossible divide. It was, she knew, the most important painting she would ever create. 2 years had passed since that magical encounter in the Sandhills, and Lily May, now 10 years old, had grown into a confident, articulate young girl whose artwork was gaining recognition throughout Nebraska. Her paintings had won the state youth art competition 3 times running, and a gallery in Omaha was planning an exhibition of her work titled Wild Hearts, a child's vision of freedom. But the most important recognition had come from an unexpected source. Dr. Martinez's documentation of the wild horse herd, featuring prominently the white stallion and his remarkable behavior around Lily May, had attracted national attention. The footage had been featured in wildlife documentaries, and the story of the guardian stallion had touched hearts across the country. The attention had led to something wonderful: the establishment of the White Stallion Sanctuary, a protected area in the northern Nebraska Sandhills where the wild herd could live safely without fear of development or interference. Lily May had been invited to speak at the dedication ceremony, her first public appearance since her rescue. "I'm nervous," she confided to Sarah as they prepared for the ceremony. "What if I forget what to say? What if people think I'm making it all up?" Sarah smoothed Lily May's hair and looked into her eyes. "Honey, you've been through things that would break most adults, and you've turned that pain into something beautiful. You have a story that needs to be told, and you're the only one who can tell it." The ceremony was held on a perfect autumn day, with golden light filtering through the cottonwood trees along the creek where they'd first observed the herd. A crowd had gathered, local ranchers, wildlife officials, families with children, and reporters from as far away as Denver. At the center of it all stood a bronze statue that had been commissioned for the occasion. A white stallion in a protective stance, head raised, mane flowing in an invisible wind. When Lily May saw the statue, tears sprang to her eyes. The artist had captured not just the physical beauty of her stallion, but something deeper, the sense of noble purpose, of love without condition that had defined their relationship. "Ladies and gentlemen," the sanctuary director said, addressing the crowd, "we're here today to dedicate not just a protected area for these magnificent wild horses, but to honor the extraordinary bond between a child in need and a guardian who asked for nothing in return. I'd like you to meet the young lady whose story made all of this possible, Lily May Williamson." As Lily May stepped forward to the microphone, she caught sight of familiar faces in the crowd. Earl McKinnon was there, his weathered face beaming with pride. Mrs. Henderson stood nearby, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Even some of her former doctors and nurses had come to witness this moment. "Hi, everyone," Lily May began, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. "2 years ago, I was a little girl who thought nobody cared about her. I was living in a place where I wasn't safe, where I wasn't loved, and I felt like I might disappear and nobody would even notice." The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. But then something amazing happened. A wild horse, a beautiful white stallion, decided that I mattered. Even though he could have been anywhere else, doing anything else, he chose to stand guard over me. He didn't ask for anything back. He didn't need me to be perfect or good or grateful. He just loved me. Her voice caught slightly, but she continued. "That horse taught me that love can come from the most unexpected places. He taught me that being wild doesn't mean being cruel, and that sometimes the gentlest hearts come in the strongest bodies." She gestured toward the bronze statue. "This sanctuary isn't just about protecting horses. It's about protecting the kind of love that doesn't make sense to grown-ups sometimes, but makes perfect sense to kids and animals. It's about making sure that guardians have a place to be guardians." As she finished speaking, a ripple of movement went through the crowd. There, at the edge of the clearing, stood the white stallion himself, as if summoned by her words. He was older now, his mane even more magnificent, his bearing still regal but somehow gentler. The crowd held its collective breath as the stallion moved slowly into the clearing, his eyes fixed on Lily May. He approached to within 20 feet of the podium and stopped, lowering his head in that familiar gesture of recognition. "Hello, old friend," Lily May whispered into the microphone, her voice filled with wonder and love. The stallion remained for several more moments, as if blessing the ceremony with his presence, before turning and disappearing back into the sandhills. The crowd erupted in applause, but Lily May barely heard it. She was thinking about the journey that had brought them all to this moment, from a chicken coop prison to a celebration of freedom and love. After the ceremony, as the crowd began to disperse, Earl McKinnon approached Lily May with tears in his eyes. "That was beautiful, child," he said. "Your guardian would be proud." "He is proud," Lily May corrected gently. "He's still watching over all of us." Dr. Martinez joined them, her face glowing with excitement. "Lily May, I have some news that I think you'll find interesting. The state has approved funding for an educational program about wildlife protection, and they want you to be part of it. You travel to schools, sharing your story and teaching kids about the importance of protecting wild animals." "Really?" Lily May's eyes lit up with excitement. "Really? Your story has already inspired the creation of this sanctuary. Imagine how many more wild places and wild creatures could be protected if more people heard what you have to say." That evening, as the family drove home through the gathering dusk, Lily May sat quietly in the back seat, processing everything that had happened. Through the window, she could see the vast Nebraska sky, painted in shades of pink and gold, and somewhere out there, she knew her stallion was running free with his herd. "Lily May," Tom said, catching her eye in the rearview mirror. "How does it feel to know that your story is going to help protect wild horses for generations to come?" She thought about the question for a long moment before answering. "It feels like everything that happened, even the bad stuff, had a purpose. Like maybe I was supposed to meet that horse, and he was supposed to meet me so that we could help other people understand about love and protection and not giving up on each other." Sarah turned in her seat to smile at her. "You know what I think? I think you and that stallion were both guardians for each other. He protected your body during those awful weeks, and you protected his story by sharing it with the world." As they pulled into the ranch driveway, Lily May noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. There, standing at the fence line of the horse pasture, was a familiar white shape. The stallion had followed them home, as if to ensure this final chapter of their story ended where it should, in safety, surrounded by love. She climbed out of the truck and walked slowly to the fence. The stallion approached from the other side, and for a moment girl and horse simply looked at each other in the starlight. "Thank you," she whispered, placing her small hand against the fence, "for everything." The stallion stepped forward and gently touched his muzzle to her hand through the wire mesh. In that touch, she felt the completion of a circle that had begun in her darkest hour. She was no longer the frightened child in a cage. She was Lily May Williamson, artist, advocate, and living proof that love could transform even the most broken hearts. As the stallion turned and disappeared into the night, Lily May knew this wasn't goodbye. Their bond would continue in the sanctuary that bore his likeness, in the children who would learn from her story, and in the wild places that would remain wild because two unlikely souls had found each other when they needed it most. She walked back to the house where Sarah and Tom waited on the porch, their faces glowing with pride and love. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new opportunities to share her story and protect the wild things of the world. But tonight, she was simply a child, coming home to a family who loved her, carrying in her heart the memory of a guardian who had taught her that love knows no boundaries. The stars shone down on the Nebraska prairie, illuminating a world where broken things could be made whole, where the wild and the tame could find common ground, and where a little girl's voice could echo across the land, calling others to protect what was precious and free. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Lily May and her guardian stallion has touched your hearts as much as it has touched ours. If you want to continue being moved by stories like this one, please subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and share in the comments what moved you the most. Here, each story is a reminder that love can overcome even the deepest darkness, and that sometimes our greatest protectors come in forms we never expected. Wild hearts understand each other across all boundaries of species and circumstance, proving that compassion is the strongest force in our world.